Look at the person sitting next to you. They aren't your partner, and they aren't your work family. They are a competitor breathing your air. Most people walk around with their rib cages wide open, showing the world exactly where to heart tag them. They think being real is a virtue, but in the real world, it's just a suicide note written in slow motion. Machiavelli didn't write for the martyrs. He wrote for the survivors who understood that the only way to keep your head is to make sure nobody knows what's inside it. You think you're being honest? No, you're being hunted. The second you let a secret slip, you've handed someone the knife they'll eventually use to carve out their own piece of your life. If you want to rule your own world, you have to be the fox in a forest of wolves, silent, smelling the trap before it snaps, and never, ever showing your hand until the game is over. These 7 secrets are your armor. Take them to your grave, or they will bury you with them. The first thing is to never let them see your next move. In this world, the moment you announce your destination, you provide every rival with a map to block your path. If you are planning to quit your dead-end job to start a rival firm, or if you are positioning yourself for a promotion that belongs to a friend, you must keep your mouth shut. Machiavelli taught that a prince must be a master of deception, a great pretender and dissembler. This means your exterior should be calm, boring and predictable, while your interior is calculating a total takeover. People will try to trip you just to see you stumble because your progress acts as a mirror to their own failures. I once knew a guy who found a massive real estate lead. He was so high on the potential payout that he told his partner everything over drinks. He wanted the ego boost. He wanted someone to clap for him before he'd even closed the deal. A week later, he found out his partner's cousin had swept in and outbid him by a few $1,000s. He lost the deal, the commission, and his leverage. The problem wasn't the cousin. It was his own tongue. He chose a 5-minute dopamine hit of applause over a lifetime of financial power. You solve this by moving in the shadows. You work twice as hard, but talk half as much. When people ask what you're up to, you give them a dull, standard answer that kills their curiosity. If you look like you're standing still, they won't feel the need to sabotage you. You let your success be the first and only time they hear about your plan. By the time they realize you've moved, you should already be sitting at the finish line, holding all the cards. A strike is most effective when the target doesn't even know a war has started. If they don't know where you are going, they cannot stand in your way. You stay a mystery until you become a legend. You don't build a monument in public. You build it in the dark and unveil it only when it's too heavy for them to tear down. If you want to be the one who wins, you have to be the one they never saw coming. The second thing is to realize that your past is a weapon, and if you leave it lying around, someone will eventually pick it up and point it at you. Everyone has a history they aren't proud of. Maybe you cut a corner at an old job, handled a breakup poorly, or took a shortcut that wasn't exactly by the book. You might feel the urge to confess these things to a best friend or a partner because you want to feel understood or forgiven. But in the world of power, a confession isn't a relief, it's a receipt. Machiavelli warned that men are ungrateful, fickle, and deceptive. When things are good, they are all yours, but when the wind changes, they will use your own honesty to bury you. I knew a guy who was rising fast in his company. During a celebratory dinner, he got a little too comfortable and told his work brother about a minor legal scrape he had in his early 20s. He thought it was a bonding moment. 2 years later, they were both up for the same executive VP role. Suddenly, an anonymous tip reached the board about his criminal character and lack of integrity. He didn't just lose the promotion, he lost his career. His problem wasn't his past, it was his mouth. He handed his rival the exact stone needed to stone him to death. He traded a moment of emotional closeness for his entire future. You solve this by becoming a blank slate. If someone starts digging into your history or asking leading questions about your wilder days, you don't get defensive, and you don't over-explain. Over-explaining looks like guilt. Instead, you remain indifferent and vague. You don't have to lie, you just have to be unreachable. If a rumor comes up, you treat it with a cold, shrug-off energy that makes the gossip look desperate and small. If you don't provide the fuel, the fire eventually goes out. Your history belongs to you and no one else. In the eyes of the public, you are whoever you claim to be today. By keeping your skeletons locked in a vault that only you have the key to, you ensure that no one can ever hold your leash. A prince is never defined by where he started, but by where he stands now. If they can't find a crack in your foundation, they can't bring down the house. Take your past to the grave, or your past will dig one for you. The third thing is to keep the size of your treasury a total mystery. Money is the blood of the state, and in your life, it is the fuel for your freedom. But the moment people know exactly how much you have, you become a target for two types of people: the leeches who want to bleed you dry, and the executioners who want to take your head because they can't stand your success. Machiavelli understood that men forget the death of their father sooner than the loss of their inheritance. This means greed is the strongest human emotion, and if you flaunt what you have, you are practically begging people to find a way to take it from you. I knew a person who hit a major windfall, a massive bonus, and some smart investments that paid off early. Instead of staying quiet, they started showing up in a new car, wearing watches that cost more than a year's rent, and picking up every tab at dinner. They thought they were earning respect and love. What they actually earned was a front-row seat to a nightmare. Suddenly, every friend had a sick grandmother, a failing business, or a can't-miss investment opportunity. When they finally said no, they weren't just seen as a friend who couldn't help. They were seen as a greedy villain. The problem wasn't their money. It was the spotlight they shone on it. They traded their peace of mind for the temporary high of looking rich. You solve this by wearing a middle-class mask. You never let your lifestyle catch up to your actual bank balance. If you're making 6 figures, you live like you're making 50,000. You stay comfortable, but you never look expensive. When people ask how business is going or how much you're pulling in, you give them a vague, tired answer about just getting by or reinvesting everything back into the work. If you look like you're struggling just as much as everyone else, they won't feel the urge to rob you, either with a gun or with a guilt trip. A prince should always appear to have just enough to be stable, but never enough to be envied. If they don't know the depth of your wallet, they don't know how long you can survive a fight, and they don't know how much power you can actually buy when the time comes to strike. You keep your wealth hidden so you can use it as a silent shield or a secret sword. If you show your gold to the world, don't be surprised when the world shows you its teeth. Keep your riches in the dark, and you'll never have to worry about who is trying to pick your pocket. The fourth thing is to never let anyone know what truly makes you flinch. In the theater of power, your emotions are not yours. They are handles that other people use to pull you in the direction they want you to go. Machiavelli understood that a leader must be a great simulator. This means you have to be an actor who never drops the character. The moment you admit that you are terrified of being alone, or that you can't stand being criticized in public, or that your family is your only weakness, you have just handed your enemies a remote control for your life. Most people think being vulnerable creates a bond. In the real world, vulnerability just creates a target. I knew a guy who was one of the sharpest negotiators in his field. But in a moment of honesty, he told his boss that he was desperate to get his kid into a top-tier private school and couldn't afford to lose his current bonus. He thought he was showing how hard he was willing to work. What he actually did was give his boss a leash. For the next 3 years, that boss piled on every miserable late-night project and skipped his raises, knowing the guy would never quit because he was terrified of failing his kid. The problem wasn't his love for his family. It was the fact that he let the world see the price tag on his soul. He traded his leverage for a moment of being understood, and he paid for it with his freedom. You solve this by building a front that has no buttons. If someone tries to provoke you or dig for your fears, you respond with cold, dry logic or complete indifference. You never let your face show what your heart is feeling. If you have a true fear, you keep it in a box that nobody, not even your closest ally, can see. If people think you have no breaking point, they will eventually stop trying to find one. You become like a stone wall. They can hit it all day, but they'll only hurt their own hands. A prince who reveals his fear is already defeated. If they don't know what scares you, they don't know how to threaten you. If they don't know what makes you angry, they don't know how to bait you into making a mistake. You stay unshakable on the outside, so you can remain in control on the inside. Keep your nightmares to yourself, or someone else will turn them into your reality. The fifth thing is to treat every favor you do like a buried treasure. Keep it underground until you actually need to dig it up. In the world of power, a favor is a silent debt, and silence is where its value grows. The moment you start bragging about how you saved someone's career, lent a friend money when they were drowning, or covered for a coworker's massive mistake, you kill the obligation. You think you're showing how helpful and powerful you are, but what you're really doing is making that person resent you. Machiavelli knew that men are quicker to forget a benefit than an injury, especially if that benefit makes them feel small or inferior every time you bring it up. I knew a guy who was the fixer for his entire social circle. He helped a close friend get a high-paying job by pulling some heavy strings with the CEO. But every time they went out, he'd make a joke about how his friend would still be flipping burgers if it weren't for him. He thought he was just being the big man. What he actually did was turn a grateful ally into a bitter enemy. Eventually, that friend got into a position of power, and instead of helping the guy back, he went out of his way to get him fired just to prove he didn't need him anymore. The problem wasn't the help, it was the ego. He traded a lifelong, get-out-of-jail-free card for a few minutes of feeling superior. You solve this by being the silent benefactor. When you help someone, you do it quietly, and then you act like it never happened. You don't ask for a thank you, and you never, ever bring it up in front of others. By doing this, you keep the person in your debt without making them feel the weight of the chain. They will feel a natural urge to pay you back because you didn't humiliate them. A hidden favor is a secret weapon you keep in your pocket. You don't pull it out to show off. You pull it out only when you are the one in trouble and you need that person to move mountains for you. A prince knows that true influence isn't about who knows you helped. It's about the person who knows they owe you their life. If you keep your favors secret, you own a network of people who are ready to jump when you whisper. If you shout about your kindness, you just own a room full of people who can't wait to see you fail. Keep your help in the dark, and your power will stay in the light. The sixth thing is to never let anyone know what you truly think of the person in charge. Whether it's your boss, a department head, or the leader of your social circle, your true opinion is a landmine. If you step on it by mistake, it takes you with it. In the game of power, there is always a king, and that king has ears everywhere. Machiavelli taught that people are so focused on their own immediate needs that someone who knows how to hide their intent will always find someone else to exploit. If you act like a loyal soldier while calculating your own rise, you stay safe. If you vent your frustrations, you're just handing out the rope for your own hanging. I knew a person who was the sharpest mind in their office. They hated the manager and thought the guy was a total amateur. During a long lunch break, they let loose to a trusted coworker about how the manager was running the department into the ground. They thought they were just bonding over a shared frustration. By the next morning, that coworker, who was looking for their own way up, had repeated every word to the manager's assistant. By the afternoon, the sharp mind was being escorted out of the building. Their problem wasn't their opinion, it was their mouth. They thought honesty among peers was a safe zone. It's never safe. They traded a moment of feeling right for their entire career and their reputation. You solve this by being a perfect mirror. When people around you start bad-mouthing the leader, you don't join in, but you don't defend the leader like a fanatic either. That looks fake and suspicious. Instead, you stay neutral and observant. You nod, you listen, and you say things like, "It's a complicated situation," or, "I guess there's a lot of pressure at the top." You become a ghost in the conversation. This way, if the king hears about the talk, your name is never attached to the treason. Even better, you now know exactly who in the room is disloyal, which is a secret you can use as leverage later. A prince knows that words have wings, and they always fly back to the person they are about. If you hate the king, keep it locked in your head until you are strong enough to take the crown yourself. If you speak your hate too early, you'll never get the chance to lead. Being the fox means watching the lions fight from a distance where their claws can't reach you. Keep your judgment silent, and you'll stay alive long enough to make the rules yourself. The seventh and final secret is to never teach anyone exactly how you do what you do. In a world that loves to talk about mentorship and sharing knowledge, you have to understand that your unique skill is the only reason you have a seat at the table. If you give away the recipe, you're just making yourself obsolete. Machiavelli taught that a wise prince should always make sure his people need him, no matter the circumstances. If you are the only one who can solve a specific, high-stakes problem, you are untouchable. If you train 3 other people to do it just as well as you, you've just signed your own layoff notice. I knew a specialist who had spent years mastering a very specific, old coding language that the entire company's database relied on. He was the highest-paid person in his department because he was the only one who could fix the system when it crashed. One day, a new manager came in and asked him to document his process so the junior team could support him. He felt proud and wanted to show off how smart he was, so he wrote a perfect step-by-step manual that explained every trick and shortcut he had developed over a decade. 3 months later, the company realized they didn't need to pay his massive salary anymore when they had 5 juniors who could follow his manual for a fraction of the cost. He was let go by the very people he had trained. His problem wasn't his skill, it was his generosity. He gave away his leverage for a pat on the back. You solve this by always keeping one part of the process a mystery. You can be helpful, and you can be a team player, but you never reveal the final turn of the key. You make sure that even if people know the broad strokes of your work, the most critical, high-pressure part of the job still requires your specific touch. When people ask how you got such a great result, you give them a vague answer about years of trial and error or intuition. You don't let them see the gears turning. If you are a mystery, you are a necessity. If you are an open book, you are a textbook that someone will eventually finish reading and throw away. A prince knows that loyalty is a fairy tale, but necessity is a law of nature. As long as you are the only solution to a problem, you have total power. The moment you become replaceable, you become a liability. You keep your edge sharp, and you keep it hidden. Let them wonder how you do it. Let them admire the result, but never, ever let them hold the tools. If you keep the source of your edge to yourself, you ensure that as long as the game is being played, you will always have a place on the board. If you want to live by the code of the fox, you can't just sit in a corner and stay silent. A person who says nothing is a person who looks suspicious. To truly hide your secrets, you have to feed the world a fake version of yourself, a version that looks open, friendly, and completely harmless. Machiavelli knew that a prince must be a great simulator. You don't hide by disappearing. You hide by standing in plain sight and giving people exactly what they expect to see. You give them the chatter, but never the truth. I knew a woman who was a master of this. Everyone in her office thought they knew her life story. She talked constantly about her weekend hiking trips, her cat's health problems, and her struggle to find a good brand of coffee. Because she was so open about these tiny, meaningless things, nobody ever stopped to realize she never mentioned her side business, her actual bank balance, or the fact that she was dating the CEO's biggest competitor. Her problem was solved before it started. By flooding the room with noise, she made sure nobody ever looked for the signal. She gave them 90% of her personality, so she could keep the 10% that actually mattered. You solve the problem of being a mystery by becoming a distraction. You share things that feel personal, but have zero tactical value. Talk about your hobbies, your favorite movies, or a funny story from when you were a kid. Be the person who brings donuts to the office or remembers everyone's birthday. When people think they know you, they stop digging. You want to be liked, but never truly known. You share your struggles with things that don't matter, like a broken lawnmower, so people think you have no real struggles at all. If you want more of these ruthless strategies to stay ahead of the game and protect what's yours, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Drop a comment below with the word silence if you've ever had a secret used against you. Let's see who's actually awake. Don't let them see you coming. I'll see you in the next one.